Richard Williams and Perry Atkins.
Thank y'all for joining us on behalf of Guinea Heritage Association and the county's 250 program. We'd like to welcome you to our program. This is part of the county's overall every month program. They have a Sunday afternoon program. So they decided that Little England would be a good topic, and we had just come off the Daffodil Festival. We had our display of daffodil stuff from Little England, and so we said, let's do Little England. Little England, and I'm not going to take your thunder.
You're fine.
Little England, because of its location, right there on the point right across from Yorktown, we tied it into the Revolutionary War, the 250 celebration that we had, by it being a lookout station for the American forces, getting a view of what was going on at Yorktown. So that's our 250 connection to Little England. Linda Grow here, her best credential is that she's a good friend of mine. I'm so highly of her. Linda has joined us here at Guinea Heritage Association. She's now a board member here. She and her husband David, who is here, were caretakers at Little England from
19 years. 19 years.
Yes. And as such got a background into all of the history and the personal history of the families there at Little England Plantation. By the way, Little England, we think the most logical explanation of how Guinea got its name is because Little England in its plantation heyday had so many slave persons from Guinea in West Africa that their slave settlement was referred to as Little Guinea because that's where they came from. And even in George Washington's missives to one of his colonels, I think, who was chasing an English troop down what we would refer to as Tide Mill Road, he said, I'm on my way to Little Guinea. So he used that same term. That sounds like, to me, maybe the best logical explanation of how Guinea got its name. But let's go back to Little England Plantation. Let me give you now Miss Linda Grow, and she's going to fill you in on all this good stuff. This is totally based. It'll be stuff that you haven't seen or heard anywhere else. I've had the book, Farrar's book on houses along the Knockjack, but this will take you in and behind the scenes of everything that we're doing, and I know you'll enjoy it. There'll be a lot of new stuff here today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Linda for presenting tonight and this evening. And we're so glad to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Quite a compliment. I hope I don't disappoint you in giving all my little things that I have learned through the years of being able to be at Little England. Today I'm going to cover a few things. I'm going to cover the original house of 1690. I'm going to cover the main house, 1716. I'm going to cover the restoration and the moving of the original house, touch on the cemetery and the ownerships through the years, and the American Revolution, our favorite thing today, touch on the miniatures at Little England, and of course we won't leave out Isabel, Hurricane Isabel, which touched us all. So the information that I'm sharing with you today come from some books, and I've got a couple to show you. Old Virginia Homes, as Hamilton just said, this is my favorite book. David gave me my copy in 1968 for Christmas, and I have worn mine out. Mine does not have a cover anymore, which is of Little England. Guns of Independence is my favorite book on Yorktown. This is where I got a lot of information, not only Yorktown, but the Battle of the Hook. They go in great depth. It is the #1 best book to talk about what took place here in Yorktown. Also, I touched a little bit on Tarlington. He has brutal virtues. We can't not bring him in because he played a part also at the Battle of the Hook. A lot of these photos are from family members that visit the cemetery. There are photos in the case. And I've got a copy of some of the stones. Their headstones are in there. Jeannie Wu and her research here with the library at the Guinea Heritage. Also, I have the story of Yorktown. It's a new book. This gentleman has taken the memoirs and he's taken the pension records, and he writes what was said by those people that were at Yorktown. It's a brand new, great book. I work part-time at the American Revolution Museum. I work in the gift shop, and that's one of our newest books that I love to tell people about. Not only Jeannie Wu's information, but Bucky Burroughs and Sarah Machette, who is the historian at the museum. So like I said, most of these photos and things I'm sharing you come from families. In the old Virginia houses, and Judith Rowe Mays, and she also contributed in some papers. Her ancestors are buried at Little England. She probably gave me the first any information that I had on it. And it talks about the grant for 400 acres in April of 1651. Can you hear me, Jenny, back there? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay. Dated to John Perrin by Governor Berkeley for transporting several immigrants. She wrote that there were 8 persons. The more land you got for the more people that you brought. She writes, Sarah Creek Plantation was taken from Baton, situated in York County across the river. And she took her records from the land office at the state, and it talks about those, and she says no records exist prior to 1787. So I had that probably our first years that we were given there. Now there's some new research, new to us. Jeannie Wu, and working with David Brown with the Fairfield Foundation. I'm going to read you a couple of things that she has written on here. So on April 3rd, 1651, John Perrin, Asheville, Baton, Thomas Bell, Joseph Hayes, that would be the Hayes of Hayes area, patent for adjoining land. Perrin's patent for 400 acres along Perrin Creek, which divided the land from Baton. Most historical accounts of this state that, and it talks about the 400 acres along the York River and Sarah's Creek, part of Bena. Based on research, this is the new stuff, based on new research by David Brown and Guinea Heritage Association, the likely location of John Perrin's original pattern is not the Little England land, but rather further north toward Bennett's Creek, now called Jones Creek, and then it's approaching the Pulpertank Creek. That was further evidence came from an assignment from John Perrin of 1651, patent to Richard Major in 1653. So that puts a little different spin on it. These references, especially the one about the Perrin River and the Perrin as we know, it indicates that that land was possibly, Little England was possibly done through reassignments of records that have been lost, or that through a purchase from another party. David Brown and Jeannie Wu are actively searching for records that would clarify the location of the original Perrin Creek and how John Perrin acquired Little England. They are also searching that Captain John Perrin III was dated 1781, and he gave to his son by his will a plantation known as the Guinea Plantation, and they are searching to find more about that, which I think is pretty cool. We're going to talk about the original house, and you can see from up here the older pictures. These pictures were taken in 1935. You can go into the Library of Congress and look at them. They were taken by Francis Benjamin Johnson. The wood structure here, that's the original 1690 house. That was built by John and Elizabeth Perrin. They raised their 6 children in that house. It's a wood frame. The main floor is one large frame house, a room, and it has a fireplace. And the upstairs were the bedrooms. The staircase is quite interesting. It's very small and it's curved. You feel like you're going up in a lighthouse when you go upstairs. When the men were doing restoration at Little England for the bars, and they were doing all the fireplaces, and they were doing the work on what we call the kitchen nail, they shared with me one of the old nails, and they said that that definitely confirmed that it was from that time frame. This is another view of it from the end. The main house. The main house is incredible. This is a picture of after Pratt bought it, and you can see where they moved that building. They moved it to make it the kitchen eventually. But you can see this photograph was taken in 1940, and it lists the people on there, that's what they were doing. The plan is said, for Little England, was said to have been made by Sir Christopher Wren. It was built by John Perrin, son of Thomas and Elizabeth, in 1716. The main house has a grand central hall with huge rooms on each side, and it's very typical of any of the houses that you've gone in, Berkeley or any of them. The windows along, they go, you can see the water view and you can see the land view on the boat. And I'm going to pass around some information on that so you can see what the interior looks like. This is after they moved that. You can see there was a hallway put here, and then that's where we call the kitchen. That's what it became later. This is what that old building looked like when we were at Little England. The brass on the doors is original. The foundation is ballast from the ships. In 2012, the staff of Colonial Williamsburg, Carl Longsburg, the senior architect historian, his wife and another member came and spent the day there with me. They just said it was in such incredible condition. It has changed so little of any building that they have ever been in for that time period. The staircase leads to the second floor. Like I said, it was restored in 1939. Harry Jordan told me his father was the one that did the work, and he spent a lot of time there when he was a kid, helping, doing whatever needed to be done. This is a pamphlet that was used for when they, from the estate of the Pratts. But I want you to be able to see that beautiful staircase, and you can slowly pass this around, but that tells you what the inside looks like. Pratt added on 10,600 square feet. It now has 14 rooms. It's just so little changed about it. It just takes your breath away when you first go in. The second floor is bedrooms, 2 large bedrooms. And it's unusual because they had big rooms for closets, I'm sure, but that's where their closet space was, and that was not added. The third floor has 2 rooms and a fireplace on each end. And when Pratt owned that, that was where the maid and the butler lived. And they did not build the manager's house until she got pregnant, which is a surprise for everybody. And he built them the house so that the child could have its own space. Probably didn't want to hear pitter-patter, a little person's crying. But that was, and then as she grew, as Vicki grew, they added on rooms. When she needed to have piano lessons, Mrs. Pratt made that room bigger. It was really wonderful to visit, learning from her. The cemetery. You can see I have a picture here, and there's pictures of those, and when you look at them, you can also see there's pictures of the stones. I'm not going to go through all of those. I am going to share with you my 3 favorite. We took a lot of people to the cemetery, and that's what I've got so much of this information from. The 2 oldest headstones. Here lieth ye body of John Perrin, son of Thomas and Elizabeth Perrin. I guess I've read that 1,000 times. I guess that's why I wrote it so many times in my notes. Who departed this life November 9th, 1952, age 63, 1 month and 2 days. Here lieth the body of M. Mary Perrin, daughter of Mr. John and Mrs. Mary Perrin, died September 18th, 1738. Age 3 years, 1 month, and 5 days. There was a whole row of little stones in the cemetery. Another of my favorite is James Fleming. He was a Civil War private. Mrs. Berry gave me the information and a story written about him. George Merdinger, he married one of the girls, and you can see that he has quite, we've got some papers we're going to share with you that you can look at some of the people in the cemetery. He was quite distinguished. And then the third one that I love is it's on the Huntley stone, and it says sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no morning of the bar when I put out to sea. And there's a ship on it. It's very good. So you can take your time to look at some of those names, and it shows you the people that live or in there. Also in the register at Abington Episcopal Church, they have listed from 1677 to 1780. There's 26 parents listed in their register. Yes. I was afraid all these papers would fall on the floor, so I couldn't know. So he's handing out also the ownership that you'll see, and I'll refer to some of it as we go along. Little England and the American Revolution, my favorite part. In September, I'm going to read something so I'll be sure to tell it right. In September 1781, General George Wheaton, commander of the Gloucester militia, reported to General Washington that the enemy, British, eluded us by coming half a mile up the road from town. They called it Gloucester Town, not Gloucester Point then. And turning down the right hand, headed for Sarah's Creek, about 2 miles from town, and made a small forage in Little Guinea, just as Hamilton was talking about. This is significant because it provides the date, directions, and of the place called Little Guinea. It also implies that the name was commonly known by 1781. Based upon the distance and direction of Little England, it is likely the location where the bridge at Tidemill crosses to Sarah Creek. This was the site of the grist mill during the Revolution. Therefore, in 1781, the western boundary of Guinea would have been taken in that area, and the boundary has been disputed through the years that was written, that some of the research that Jeannie found out, because it has changed so much through the days. So I've tried to put these in some order from August from the time period. In September 1781, Brigadier General Claude Charvel Hamilton, what's that name?
Shawaz.
Yes. I'm just going to call him General C. I have practiced 2 weeks. I do not know how French, or I'm going to call him General C. He was at Little England, that is my point. His men used the top floor to observe what was going on at Gloucester Town, also Yorktown, and the ships in the bay. At that time, why they had such a clear view, there were no trees. Tobacco was making the money, so they cleared everything. So they had a clear view. The picture of the siege on the mirror that we have at the museum, I wondered why it all looked so, I thought it was from battle. But no, I believe it was because tobacco was king. And when my husband and I were at Montpelier about a month ago, the guide even said that James Madison had a better view of the mountains because there were no trees in the way, because the tobacco was what they farmed, every bit of it they could. This is a little side note that Bucky Burris told me that I just love. I never thought about the name of Timberneck, but Timberneck, they kept 200 acres for their trees. They kept it so that they had a need for wood, they had 200 acres of wood. And I never put it together. A neck of timber. That makes sense what timber was called. One of the first things we discovered when we were at Little England, that brick house had wood trim on those windows that needed to be painted. And when the guys got up there to work on those, they discovered the French names etched in some of the panes of glass. It was really cool to find out. George Washington was concerned about Gloucester Point for a couple of reasons. They believed that Cornwallis was planning to use it not only where he was looting and storing food there, that he was doing all over Gloucester, but also that it was on his possible escape route, which we found that that's what he was wanting to do later, if he could work out. Washington dispatched Luzerne, a French lead, to come to Gloucester Point. This poster was done for the Battle of the Hook, and the Battle of the Hook plays a very important part. And I'm going to read you what it talks about in this picture of a family. Return on York River. A Virginia militiaman says goodbye to his family as he prepares to cross the York River to General Washington. These brave rowers were Gloucester watermen, or at least men that were familiar with York River, as it was no small feat to cross by rowboat, especially when Cornwallis and the British might still have boats afloat that could have sunk them. Cornwallis sank 100 of his own ships. The more he knew he didn't want them to get close to him, so he sunk. And we hope later this year to have a wonderful program on that. But that's why it said they were hoping that there could be still boats afloat. In 6th grade, my history teacher, it came back to me when we found the names etched. And he came back, and as he described it, was on a moonless night they crossed the York River. So now the Battle of the Hook is October 3rd, 1781. I'm just going to give you a little rundown on the hook so it all fits in place. I'm not usually used to talking this long, honey. Battle of the Hook. Hook, if you're not familiar with it, is the crossroads of 17 and Guinea Road. It's right there at Whitley's, Scott Bosco's, the old Rite Aid, and there is a marker there. So a column of men under Tarleton was returning from foraging and encountered our guys. It was one of the few direct actions of the Yorktown campaign, but more importantly, it was on our side of the river. For 2 months, the British had free hands in looting. You know, they were taking not just crops, they were taking sheep, they were taking horses, they took whatever they needed. General Wheaton headed 1,500 Virginia militia, infantry, and cavalry, and it says so much of the time when you read about them, so few had training. That's kind of a common set in words that you read when you talk about these men. September 24th, Luzerne's Legion arrives. He has 320 mounted troops, officers, and then his entire legion is 620 men. A third of them are French. 15 countries from Europe represent the rest of his men. They were, when on September 29th, General C arrived with 800 Marines, and they were on loan from de Grasse. General C was in charge. Luzerne was not a fan of his. He made it known that he didn't want to go to battle. He didn't want to get killed. And that was what was written in. I was like, whoa, what? And what's a general stand up for you that doesn't want to go to battle? And he always found fault with General Wheaton. Luzerne had been hunting for his adversaries, and that would have meant in our area, from like Sewell's Ordinary all down into his areas, what I tagged, that's kind of my input. And when he wrote this, I saw a very pretty woman at the door at the little farmhouse on the high road, and I went up to her and questioned her. She told me that Colonel Tarleton had just left her house a moment before. He assured her he had come on purpose to gratify him. Luzerne wrote, I was not 100 steps from the house when he heard pistol shots from his advance guard. The fight was on. That's what was in his quote. And in the pictures that they had for doing the Battle of the Hook, there was a series of paintings that were done. They show Sewell's Ordinary in the background of it with one of those pictures. And I do know it's written that there was meetings later at Sewell's Ordinary. Tarleton was a very bad, evil person. It was written that his corps was known for war more acts of cruelty than any other in the British Army. At the Battle of the Hook, he was not from his saddle. They didn't capture him, but he was not. And it said they brought a lot of smiles to our guys. Something that they did not know at the time, after the Hook, that was his last active military. After that, his career was over. Never again would he lead men in combat. Luzerne and Turlington both had a short love interest with a Mary Robertson. Thought that was interesting. And after the war, those two were friends. Luzerne died under the guillotine during the French Revolution. And here's, this is the transcript. I'm going to let you guys see this. This gives you a layout of the house. This was another pamphlet, but this talks about the layout. And then on this is different buildings that are there on the property. I'll let you guys take a look at that. This is the transcript that Bucky Burris found when he was doing research for the Hook. I was so excited. It's dated 17 October 1781. That's 2 days before surrender. Dear Sir, General Whedon, being unwell, has retired at sunset about 3 miles from camp till morning. I therefore took the liberty of opening Colonel Turnbull's letter of this date. The intelligence of today from deserters are that the enemy crossed over, that he collected in town nearly 1,000 men last night and had delivered our clothing to our troops. But no mention of Cornwallis being over in person. The report from the Hussars stationed at Perrin's House of Intelligence that the enemy has been crossing and recrossing the whole day. But it appears that more went to York than crossed to this side. And between 4 and 5 this evening, 7 large boats loaded, supposedly carrying 50 men in each crossing from this side to the York. I send you, General C. Every precaution on this side will be taken. He was sending the letter. Every precaution on this side will be taken, and he desired me to inform you, should any circumstance of moment come to his knowledge, I will, with every sentiment of respect and esteem, your excellent, most obedient, and humble servant, Sam H. Bradley. When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, it really is true what they said. These, before I knew any of the other Richard, they really were here. And Brigadier Wheaton was a tavern owner, and he was a veteran of the French and Indian War. When you read about these officers, you find that that's where a lot of them got their training. The men at Yorktown, for years it was estimated between 5,000 and 9,000 are our guys, but with the French coming and all, it says roughly 14,000. We had 3 times as many men as the British did. In the book of the story of Yorktown, that's the one I said it's from these people's memoirs, I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that was said in there. The night of the surrender, Washington took great pleasure writing to Congress about the surrender. He wrote, on the 17th instant, a letter was received from Lord Cornwallis proposing a meeting to consult on terms from the surrender of the posts of York and Gloucester. And Ebenezer Weil of the 1st Massachusetts Regiment wrote about the surrender in his journal, and he finished his writings with, the prisoners are to remain in York and Gloucester till conveniences will permit of their marching on to places of their destination, which was the back parts of Virginia and Maryland. This one officer said, this one journal said, the officers received horses to ride in the regiment, 2 wagons for the officers' baggage, wives, and artillery. All of the sick and wounded remained behind in Gloucester with one of our medics. All of us were walking with canes, with knapsacks, camp kettles, and canteens hanging on us. Our first march was 5 or 6 Virginia miles, of which makes 1 German hour. We camped overnight under the open sky in the meadow and had very little food to divide and eat. And then later it talks about the 21st headed to Winchester. So a little more about the parents. Cy Riley sent this to Jeannie Wu in April 2000. This talks about his tax list, what he had tax lists in, and this is John Perrin III. It gets confusing trying to keep these John Perrins straight. So John Perrin III, in 1782, he had 1,300 acres, 64 slaves, 9 horses, 33 cattle in Abington Parish. 100 acres in Abington was listed separately, and 2 lots in Gloucester Town. Little England remained in the Perrin family until 1827. Elizabeth Page, great-great-granddaughter of John Perrin, sold it to John Goodall. Judith didn't know much about him when she was writing, but she said they believe that he was the first to call it Little England. Anne Hobday called it Fairview because she didn't like how the British treated the colonists. And Pratt put it back to Little England. Between 1836 and 1856, sometime between there, Captain William Howard Hobday, sir, that's where you get your Hobdays coming in, purchased the estate and moved his family from king and queen. Captain William Hobday served in the War of 1812. And there is mention in the Virginia House that Little England was used as a hospital for the wounded in 1812. I never have been able, or any of the people that have looked for some of the things, found that. But I have some speculation. I read that Captain Perrin was in the Elizabeth River, which be around Norfolk. And if he had wounded men, I would bring them home to let my family treat them. And that's why I think that was read there, but that's purely my speculation. Captain Hobday died in 1885. He left Little England to his daughter and husband with the understanding they would take care of his wife. As you can see, so many in the houses in Virginia, they were just in such disrepair. Just like the Civil War, there just wasn't any money to do the things that it had. So it remained in that condition until Emmett Cutchin, and his picture is down there, his wife and his sister, as Eva Littlepage. In 1930, they sold it to Theodore Pratt. He was part of Standard Oil, and he was a friend of the Rockefellers. Tyler Harris was best friends with Mrs. Pratt, and I got a lot of information with her because I waited on her at the bank, and I would ask her things, and then she'd go call the daughter, and I would get information. So she said she was at Little England several times and answered the door, and it would be Mr. Rockefeller, and then she would take him down to the pool to talk with Mr. Pratt. The Pratts restored Little England. I mean, what they did is just so incredible, and you've got that little brochure around. As you can see, everything in it was so beautiful. Everything in it was just perfect, and they consulted the historians at Williamsburg, and they allowed the tours in their homes and in the garden, especially in the daffodil garden. The daffodil pictures over here that I have the original price list for the bulbs. In 1956, Francis Gordon's aunt gave me that. Francis got that for me. And it's got some interesting things. In 1956, just think of these prices. There are 197 varieties, 131 regular, 66 miniatures, and in 1955, the Empress of Ireland, you can remember that one, was the prize winner in the London show. It said only 2 bulbs would be allowed to the United States. Price for that bulb was $200. On the order sheet, they said that they would be in bloom in the spring. There's 2 of them. There is one listed a bulb that goes for $100. Now you're talking about 56. Some people probably hardly made that kind of money. The Rishi was $100. There are 2 bulbs at $60 each, and there's 18 varieties that run from $20 to $30. So check out those lovely pictures that are of the daffodils were everywhere. The first spring when the daffodils came up, none came. I went down to the formal garden, and there's none, not one bulb, and I was disappointed. But the pasture where the horses live was full. I picked about 25 varieties that first year, and so any fundraiser I worked at those times, guess who was in charge of the flowers? That built the pond in 1955. It was the source of irrigation all over the property. Mr. Motley, E.W.'s father, he dug that. I have some pictures of that at home, of his work doing that. There's 60 acres on the property, about 60 acres. Sometimes you read 62 and you read 59. And there's 1 mile of shoreline. I had the luck of Pratt's son-in-law come to a seafood festival one year, and he walked up to David Burke and he said, "Anybody around here know anything about Little England?" And David said, "Well, you picked the right booth to ask that." He said, "This lady lives there." And so we chatted for a little bit, and I said, "Sir, can you tell me something I have been told?" He said, "What is it?" And I said, "Well, I was told that Pratt's daughter wanted to dance with her father at her wedding. And she paid, and he put a dance floor out in front around the pool." He said, "That's right." And I said, "And it said that cost $5,000. And he said, "Yes. I think it was year 58 that he got married." He said, "Yes. She put out that dance floor and danced with his daughter, and they took it down the next day." I have some pictures of the miniature horses. And that is part of the Reinekers. After Pratt's death in 1977, the estate was sold to a German doctor, Dr. Hans Reinecker, for $1.1 million. His wife was one of the first people on the East Coast to raise miniatures, and it tells about what they have to be 34 inches for 5 years to be truly registered as a miniature horse. There's the manager's house there. There's the guest house. We lived in the manager's house. The guest house was really, really interesting, and that was another one of, "Tyler, can you find out?" So you went into this house. It's a wood structure, as you can see on one of the sheets, and it had only bedrooms and one big room. It made no sense, and a huge bathroom, and no kitchen. So Tyler went home and called the daughter in Florida, and she came back. She said, "Well, this makes sense." So when the Pratts had parties, the adults stayed in the main house, and he built the guest house. That's where the nannies and the children stayed. And they ate all their meals in the main house, so they didn't need to have any kitchen. So she said she enjoyed that the best because that's where she stayed when she had somebody to play with. So she said that was one of her favorite places on the whole place. I thought that was really pretty cool. All right, so, we became caretakers in '93. Son-in-law later. Timmy joined us, and then later Nikki and Cody, all of us were down there because it was more than one person could take care of, you can imagine. And it was manicured all the time. We were always ready in case the doctor called up and said, "I'll be in Dulles tomorrow at 3. So it was always manicured. Everything was cut, clean, ready to go. Isabel took quite a toll, and I have a book here, and it shows before pictures on the point where it was just made into a swamp. And this is in front of what it hit, this tree fell right on where the chimney for the main house, and this is the hallway and for the kitchen. CW came down first thing in the morning. I can pass that around if y'all would like to take. It's a huge, huge tree. And he was afraid that if they started to move it, it would roll over onto the old house. So he arranged for a special piece of equipment to come and pick it up. That piece of equipment, that rental, was $16,000. That took but maybe a half a day that they could get that up, and we all stood around and held our breath. That storm opened up the pond. After they got it restored, we had crabs for at least a year or so in the pond, freshwater pond. The seawall from the neighbor's house where you see the line of trees all the way right to the point, just that part, not the entire property. The seawall to restore that was $250,000. And I have an album of different things that we're doing there. David and Timmy in an old beat up pickup truck and a chipper. Those guys, we got that back together for Easter visit. Now that's October, and we know the doctor's coming, and he would be saying, why are there limbs? Why are those trees there? So you had to have it back in order, and it was quite a lot of work, but they did it. And we tried to buy more equipment, but he wasn't big on that. He thought they had all the equipment they needed. It's a beautiful place. It's a very special place. I love it so very, very much. I love the history. I love meeting all these people and they're sharing their stories. One lady came from Norway to visit her family, and she was through the Flemings, the Raleigh family. So I had made a family reunion, and they came and I gave them a tour of the cemetery. That was where all this beautiful stuff came. The Bars bought it in 2012. They live on the property, so they didn't need us to stay there. And they did a lot of needed, big-time restoration, because no real work had been done since Pratt. So the doctor bought it in 77, 78, and there was a lot of big things that needed to be replaced. So David patched a lot of stuff and kept it going. I love it. I love the history. We made wonderful memories there with our families and our friends, and especially watching my granddaughter explore and learn the place. And the Bars are a beautiful family, and they hope to live there forever. And her family are now discovering more, and she wanted to make sure we get her a tape because she couldn't be here today to hear this. But I thank you all. I hope you've enjoyed the information that I've shared with you today. And like I said, I'm here. Please look at the pictures and wander around. There's aerial views of it, of what's then and now, and more pictures of the house over there, and some more aerial views. So if I can answer any questions, if you'd like, I'd be happy to try. But thank you so much for coming today.
Do we have any questions?
Yes.
Okay, fire away.
Have you thought about publishing all of your information? I mean, because
This is Jeannie Wu. This is Jeannie.
But this is unbelievable, all the information you have and your personal experiences there, and David's. You should write it all down.
Well, I wrote it down for here, and I've got it, so I wanted to bring more in the Battle of the Hook, because I didn't know about the Battle of the Hook. I only heard about it when the bank was sponsoring the battle, and I got to know Bucky a little better. It's so much information. When I was growing up, when we went over to the battlefield, I came back and I asked Olin Lewis, I said, did the battle just stop at the river? You know, there was no mention of Gloucester. It just said, oh yeah, that's Gloucester County over there. That was the end of it. So I always thought, I can't believe that there wasn't anybody over there doing something. And it always made me curious. And so I had collected a lot of the things, but I feel like the Battle of the Hook was very important. And when you write about Washington's concerns, bringing the French in, it's a real joy. But I tried to have it in a little more detailed, and I'm glad that Sharon can record it so I can share it with some friends that couldn't be here today. And you guys have certainly complimented me by showing up today. I was not expecting such a nice crowd. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other questions right here?
Yeah.
Gordon?
One thing that most people don't know about the Battle of the Hook, it was the largest cavalry engagement in the Revolutionary War.
That's really pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
I'll add one more thing. A lot of historians believe that Washington would not have prevailed had the Battle of the Hook not been successfully won by the colonials.
Right.
Because Cornwallis was looking for a way to escape.
Oh, yes.
And he tried it. But because of the weather and some other factors, he decided not to fill the remaining boats. He sent over, I don't know, almost 1,000 troops.
I tried to
It
look
took 'em
for it.
back.
I had read somewhere or heard somewhere that when they show at the museum, there's a scene showing him trying to, thinking he's going to escape. And somewhere in the back of my mind, it said that a boatload of people were drowned, and I haven't seen that. But that department said we can't; it's too rough, and
It was
we
just
all
too
know
rough.
how rough it gets.
And they had no escape, and so
They were trapped.
without that win, I mean, we may not have won that battle.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so
Exactly.
significant.
Yeah. That really elevates Gloucester, doesn't it? Yeah.
Anything else?
Just curiosity, I'm sorry. Just curiosity, was there a routine crossing from England over to Yorktown, or did they have to travel?
That was probably what they had, and they did this in the Civil War. At the Yacht Haven, there was a ferry that could take a cart and a horse, and that would be the shortest point, was from what was called Ferry's Point, but right there at the Yacht Haven, over to Little England. And I've seen some drawing with that, but I know they did that, yeah, that's probably where they transported right through there. And it's not that far if you go from Little England by Yacht Haven, it's just down the road. It's not like you gotta go around to Tide Mill and around. That would be definitely the shortest.
I understand that Captain Perrin had a sea captain. He hired a sea captain.
Well, I don't know about the sea captain, but I know
Well, he had his
captain.
own ship, and I think that Perrin needed his product, whatever he made. I don't know what he grew or what he did, but whatever he did, he had to transport it to England. And so for a long time, they got to be very good friends, and he would go back and forth, and I kept his business going. But he did give this captain, I think his name's Tillage, he did give this captain some land, and he built a house. And I wonder if you know anything about it, because I've been trying to figure out where that house was built, because I don't know anything about it.
It might be my house. We call it the Captain House. We live right outside of Little England.
Yeah.
Right?
Right before, before Chris Lee's.
Yeah,
That was always, but this is,
and
I
that's
think
where
it's 55 is this house.
Right.
And there was, we always wondered about what do you need a captain for?
That's not on here. Luckily, it didn't break. So, from your house that you're talking about, it's right at the gate of Little England. Pratt had he had several yachts. And that's where the captain, who lives down the road here, Mr. Beckwith, that's where he lived.
Oh, okay.
That's how we heard about it being the captain's house. Before that, I don't know. But that's where that was, and that's just right at the entrance of Big John's old place, now the Lee's. But that was always known in our generation as being the captain's house, and that's where he lived.
Cool.
So there was no deep water port at Little England where the ships could come in and pick up the cargo?
I don't know about how that was, I don't know exactly where. Most places had a landing, but you can see what they're in the basement. There is an archway that looks like that was probably at one time an outside entrance that would be close to where it's off the office is now. And I always suspected that might have been the way that people came in that brought the supplies, because it's in the basement, and that would be the closest direct without having to go through upstairs. So but it was always just an arch, and it's just, at one time it looks like it was once, and that would be my guess. I'm kind of like you, because something is going to be coming up, and that would be the closest way in. It's right there where the dock is, right across from the yacht. You can see it.
Hey Linda, what is the connection, or what generation did it happen when the parents got hooked up down at Perry?
I don't know. I do not know. That's what how that got named, Tommy, I don't know. That's why they're trying to research more on the parents. Because I assumed growing up, Jean, you correct me, but I just assumed it was from the parents at Little England. But now when we have this information that shows that that land grant was further up the county, I'm not sure. I've not seen anything or read anything. And the information that the parents that were given to me, a lot from the families, the Hobdays and Mayor. There's not very much that I know of about on the parents, and that would be a great thing to research. Jean probably can answer that better.
Well, according to William Rowe, did you know Miss William Rowe? We interviewed him, 20 years ago, and he told us that the Perrin land went to the line fence road, and from the line fence road on was Dobson. That was the boundary. Okay, so there's the Guinea, there's Perrin Plantation Road.
Perrin Field was all
that would have been on the parents.
Yeah.
And we think that might have also been part of the Guinea Plantation.
Yeah, that's what that would make sense. But yeah, and it was big parcels, they had so much. Like Sherwood, which is like you're going down to Little England. That that was part of it. Dun hunting. Dun hunting is a neat little feature about Little England. And the family gave me this, it's just pictures of it. And down on Melanie Road, on Lane, it's dun hunting. And this was a cottage where the men were at Little England, when they were done hunting, they would go to this cottage and probably smoke their cigars and drink their whiskey and talk about what they'd done that day, and that was called dun hunting. And for years, on the back of Melanie, on the back of the sign for Melanie Lane, it did say dun hunting. I never understood it until, and I do have a picture of that in this book here. I do have a picture of that little cottage. And the lady that gave me all these beautiful pictures, her father was born at Dunhunting when it was a house, and his parents lived there. And he described the house to her. When I showed her a picture of it from a field standpoint, she was like, oh my God, this is exactly how Dad explained it. And he was never allowed to go upstairs. He was never allowed to go upstairs in the land. He said when he went into the main house, the main entrance, what's the dining room? That's where they stored all the meat. That's where the animals were hanging, and there was jugs, and there was meat, and then the living room was over on the other side. And so that was a different thing, but he said he had never been upstairs in that house, and I thought that was really pretty strange. And he lived right in there, like I said, that was all part of it. And the house Sherwood all the way goes out.
I grew up right by Sherwood, and every year when I was a boy, there was fox hunting with horses and trumpets and red outfits.
Yeah.
Did that come from Little England?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I used to hide in the woods with my BB gun. And the biggest fox jumped in front of me one day. I could hear the dogs coming. He scared me to death, so I threw the gun down and ran to the house. I wondered where it all started.
They had big hunts, and there's a picture of it. I can dig it out for you, but there is a picture of that little
So
cottage.
that's where they started their horses.
That's where the men went, and he said that's where he was born, was in that house, dun hunting. I always thought it was so cool. I kept thinking, dun hunting, what's dun hunting? And then when she explained, I'm like, okay, they were all done hunting for the day.
You know, I watched that fox after he jumped over the fence, ran straight to the York River, because I was trailing him, got in the river and swam up, and then came back on shore, and the dogs lost him.
That's what deer do too.
Where is the fort goes for Little England and Cuba?
What means?
Little England stops, and then there's Cuba. That might be another subject,
Well,
but
yeah.
I don't know how that
We
goes.
have some, these are some pictures about the land grants for the Dobsons and Guineas, and you guys can take a look at this. But it does kind of tell you, shows you how much the Dobsons and things were on the land. And this also shows further down.
You don't know where Cuba came from?
No, ma'am, and I've read in the books, we're not sure about, I don't know that, I haven't, no. Jeannie, do you know? No,
Well-
there's speculation.
Cy Riley, who just recently passed, he was of the opinion that it also came from the many blacks who were sent originally down to Cuba, in that area, and then they were brought up from there. And we think that probably the Dobsons had a lot of slaves from Cuba. And so it's called, I mean, that is a theory, we don't know for sure if it's true. But
Guinea and Cuba.
it makes
It makes sense, it does make sense.
I think the deep water port for Little England, we've got another question back there.
Okay.
But I think the deep water port for Little England would have been at Gloucester Point. That ended up being the deep water port for the ferry and for the steamboats, and for later on the deep water draft. The prospector from Deep Sea Ventures was all docked there because of the deep water. The water rushing through that channel kept that area right at Gloucester Point as a deep water place. So I think that would have been the port for the boats. Now they would have had to haul their stuff to Little England, but I think that's where any deep draft vessels would have come in.
Yes, sir.
Albert, this got nothing to do with Little England, but what would be happy to see the use of this building. Thank God
Yes, he
for
would.
the ones that's keeping it going.
Yes.
Thank you for getting it to begun as a museum. The work you did in the background, LT, is what got us to where we are today. So thank you all around.
All right,